Welcome to Magic in the Ordinary, where we talk about amazing magical things in everyday life. Today I want to talk about Eat and Run, which is a book by Scott Jurek. For those of you who don't know Scott Jurek, he is a ultra marathon runner who he's had a ton of championships, things like this. This book is all about his life, so it's kind of part memoir. It talks about his origin story, his running career, as well as it talks a lot about like it's kind of emerged with a how-to. There's recipes in each chapter. There's tips for people who want to run farther and faster. He runs some insane distances, like he's won like 100 mile races. He's also won 245-mile races. Like these races are insanely long. He's not just running um, smaller ultra marathons, which are still not small at all, obviously, but he's running some pretty insane distances. So this book is like part how to level up while also part memoir. It's a really fun blend, actually. I enjoyed it. I thought the writing style was really engaging, so I was hooked from page one and I read through the whole thing in a fairly short amount of time. Marking, you can see where I've marked all the different recipes that I really want to try. So today I wanted to share with you guys three things that I took away from this book, kind of giving you a glimpse into why you might want to read the story, and also just some things that might be helpful for you in your running journey as well, or your health journey in general. So number one, I got to see what a high protein vegan diet looks like. And I've been doing like a lot of research in the last couple of years on protein and why it's so important. There's so many interactions in our body which require protein. There are so many subpar things that we're kind of handed these days that are labeled with protein. I mean, I've seen like protein cereal and it's got a lot of sugar. There's a lot of sugars in those cereals and not actually much protein, even though there might have a couple grams here or there. So it was really fun for me to see how Scott got protein in through a vegan diet because vegans, I don't always see vegan cookbooks really heavily emphasizing this, but he's an ultra marathoner. What was fun for me about this piece of the story is that he started off eating, fast food, different things like that. He ran a lot. He could eat whatever he wanted, but he realized that if he wanted to get faster, he's going to not have to change how he trained because he was already training as hard as he physically could, but he was going to have to change something else. And so what he ended up changing was how he ate. And really focusing on a protein high vegan diet helped him get faster and get stronger. So that was a really fun transformation for me to see how changing diet could impact his performance so much, where he started winning races after that and stuff like that. It was really fun. I think as someone who wants to get in a lot of protein, that was really applicable. I marked a lot of the recipes, like I showed you guys, because I want to try to implement some of these things into my diet as well, which I thought was really cool. And then, yeah, just do more research about nutrition and stuff. I've done quite a bit, but it's been a lot in the meat side of things because meat can be such a high form of protein. And so seeing this alternate side was really exciting. All right, number two, I saw some behind the scenes for some iconic races. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the book Born to Run. It kind of was a book that transformed the running world for a really long time. Essentially, what Born to Run is one man decides, he's gonna research the question of why do we have so many knee problems and all these different problems as runners nowadays when they're used to, or especially in America, when there are runners who can kind of run forever. So he looked at the Tarahumara, the indigenous tribe in Mexico's Copper Canyons, and he looked at how they were able to run for miles, also, often marathon distances or more without getting injured. And so Born to Run is really this analysis of, hey, maybe our bodies are really meant to run for long distances, and we can learn something from these people who run so effortlessly for so long. Now, I actually really enjoyed that book. It helped me a lot in my own running journey. Think a lot about form. How am I running versus how are they running? What's the mindset around things like this? And it's an exciting read. A lot of people have read it. If you're a runner, I recommend check it out. It's just kind of a classic in the running world. So Born to Run. But what's interesting in that one is there is a race, and it's kind of a bunch of ultra marathoners kind of going up against these Tarahumara people. And in the book, of course, the Tarahumara people win, and it's very exciting. And they're almost kind of put on a pedestal as a different kind of person, like kind of the super runners. There's the rest of us, and then there's those super runners. And I mean, they're amazing. So hats off to them. They're incredible. What was fun about Scott Jurek's book is that he was one of the marathoners that went up against them in the ending of that other book. And so this is his story, and he shares a different perspective than that author, Christian McDougall, I think. Christopher McDougall, he wrote Born to Run. This book, we get more of an inside scoop onto one of the ultramarathoners who are going up against the Tarahumara people. What's interesting is, as a runner, he's able to see not just that I mean, they have incredible form, they've got incredible philosophies around running, which he does try to adapt, and he does learn from, but he's more of a mindset that they're not like a different kind of person. They have things to teach us, but we can learn that. And so it was kind of this really interesting, I'd seen this race almost from a distance in this other book and seen it framed in a certain light, and then seeing Scott Jurek, who's this is his way of life, was saying, yeah, the Tarahumara people that he went up against were incredibly talented athletes, but they were able to teach him, they were able to be friends, and they were able to connect in a certain way because of his ultra running experience. And he did put in the book that he came back the next year and he beat them. He won the race the following year. Partly because I think having implemented a lot of the things that they had taught him, he was able to make use of that. And so, anyways, it was just really interesting kind of hearing about this group of people who are almost like um, on a different plane, and realizing that it's actually his book makes it more of an invitation of, we can learn from these people. We can be like them. And that was an interesting shift, a very interesting look at behind the scenes for the Tarahumara people, for ultra marathoning, and for that race, and for behind the scenes of Born to Run as well, getting a different perspective, which is really fun. So I've learned a lot about ultra marathoning and getting in a lot of protein just through plants, which is really exciting. And the final thing I've learned from this book is actually that not everyone has to run an ultramarathon, which is a little bit ironic. I think a lot of people have read this book and kind of Eat and Run by Scott Jurek and thought, yeah, maybe I want to run one as well. And I think that that's really good. If people want to run an ultramarathon, that might be just the way to go. Um, but it was really fascinating to me to see kind of why he ran. And he wants to win, but he makes it very clear that that's not why why he's running. There's something a lot deeper than that. Running in some ways, and I want to make sure I'm saying this right. I'm not sure if I'm saying this quite right, but from my understanding, why he runs is number one, he essentially wants to get into a flow state. But number two, it's deeper than that. It's almost a spiritual state. It's very meditative. It's a state that he says is on the other side of pain. He's able to reach that, like very deep, kind of like emptying of his mind. And he's able to kind of help find himself and hopefully build himself within that. And maybe he would just say help find himself. He's very present to that moment in races like this. I found this really interesting. Honestly, the book that this reminded me of the most, Eat and Run, reminded me of the most was Eat, Pray, Love, which is really, really different. I know that's like kind of a trendy travel book, but the premise of Eat, Pray, Love is this woman, she's gone through a lot of pain and she wants to find kind of deep fulfillment, and she looks for it through meditation. So and also I mean, she goes on a foodie journey as well, eat, pray, love. But she also, that pray portion of the book, she's really looking for a kind of deep meditative experience which kind of pulls her out of herself. And so she's searching for that in Eat, Pray, Love. And in Scott Jurek's Eat and Run, I felt like it was a very, very similar journey, actually. It was really interesting watching his journey and thinking of her journey as well, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and just kind of seeing these parallels of people who are really striving hard for something to get this meditative, fully present, not thinking about anything else, almost flow state, but a little bit deeper. I think doesn't quite fully embody what they were experiencing, something like really, really present and really, um, a deep meditation is how I would say it. What what really interested me here was Scott Jurek seems to reach this kind of reach for this state through intense running. And he's had some insane experiences where he's like, I broke an ankle and then I broke a toe and I was hobbling and it was like, you know, 24 hours of intense and acute suffering. I was hallucinating, I was sweating, and then on the other side of that, while I was running, I was able to hit this intense meditative state where I was fully present. There was nothing but just being present. And his description to me felt really similar to that meditative state that the author of Eat, Pray, Love would hit when she'd meditated for a really long time and learned how to kind of calm her mind and stuff like that. So I think that they're both hitting on something great. You know, there's this kind of meditation, this being present that it's hard to reach. It takes discipline. But I guess it made me think a lot about there's different ways to reach that point. For Scott Jurek, it's running past what you think is humanly possible. And for the author of Eat, Pray, Love, it was simply sitting and trying to implement different meditation techniques that she'd found in the different places where she traveled. So I think I realized like if at the end of the day, ultra marathoning is to try to find this deep peace about yourself, there are so many different ways to do that, and it might not look the same for each person. The other thing I thought was interesting is he pointed out that running in this sense can almost be a little bit like an addiction, and it's not. A lot of people, he said, are recovering drug addicts that get into ultra marathoning scene. It's just that thing that can give them enough of a high, even though it's crazy difficult, to help be kind of their alternative if they get out of the drug scene. I thought that was really interesting. You know, it gives a high that's really helpful. It's obviously like I would say probably a healthy life switch, depending on how many miles you go. But it was really fascinating to me to think about like why do an ultra versus something else, and maybe it's going to be exactly the thing somebody needs, but maybe there's a different way of reaching that level of intense being present and that fulfillment. Whether that's through a different sport, whether that's through a different prayer form. You know, Catholic meditation is also something that we've seen similar experiences in terms of reaching really deep levels of meditation. And you know, no 300-mile race required to reach those levels of awareness and peace. So it was interesting. At the end of the book, I didn't feel like he'd fully found peace the way the author of Eat, Pray, Love seemed to wrap it up. I don't know if that's, you know, I don't know why that is. At the end of the book, it was still a little restless, but it was a fascinating read all the way through. I learned so much about the ultramarathoning world, about healthy eating, things like this, different ways different racers, different ultramarathoners eat. And I hope that that was helpful for you as well. Yeah, if you've got any comments, definitely leave them in the chat. Sorry, drop them below. And I'll see you guys next time.